Why do we self-sabotage and how can we stop doing it? The reason we self-sabotage is because we are running unconscious automatic patterns. And these unconscious patterns were created in order that we could survive and in order that we could grow and develop. They are necessary. They were created to preserve our life force energy in order that we could expand and create. And we have hundreds of these benign unconscious patterns that we never even pay any attention to. If you think about any skill that you have learned since being a baby or a toddler, all of those skills are now run as unconscious patterns. And that is so that we have the energy and the life force that they would otherwise take to apply to our own growth and development. So if you think about tying your shoe, the first time you tried to tie your shoe, it took so much effort, so much energy, so much concentration. And the only way you learn how to tie your shoe is to continue to apply that energy and focus and attention until you had completed that process. And then that process and the pattern, everything you needed to do with your hand, your body, the shoelaces, was logged and integrated into your unconscious, so that you didn't have to apply that same amount of energy and effort and attention each time you tied your shoe. Now, these kind of patterns are benign patterns. They don't have any emotional charge related to them whatsoever. But have you ever tried to change one of them? Brushing your teeth is a benign unconscious pattern. And let's say you brush your teeth with your right hand and you decide one day, I want to brush my teeth with my left hand. Try this tomorrow if you like. Your entire being will respond with the sense of, this does not feel right. This is wrong. This is all kinds of wrong. This takes too much energy, too much effort, too much concentration, too much focus, and it doesn't even do the job properly. I can't brush my teeth with my left hand. There will be this massive impulse to return to your right hand or your dominant hand to brush your teeth. And this is a pattern with no emotional charge. It has just had so many repetitions and has run on automatic so long that it is the easier, familiar, effortless pattern. So it is the one that your system wants to return to because it doesn't take your life force energy. And let's be honest, we don't want to spend our life force energy changing which hand we brush our teeth with. Now, that is a simplistic and benign pattern. We can add more complexity to our unconscious patterns depending on how many times we experience it or focus on it or add to it. So let's say that you have a pattern of playing the guitar and you've gone from beginner to novice, and so you have that pattern within your system of how to play guitar. You know exactly where to put your fingers, when, how hard to strum the strings, how to follow notes, etc. And if you were to put more attention, more focus, more energy, more effort, and more repetition into that pattern, you would add to the complexity of it. So I was watching a girl on YouTube Shorts the other day, and she was just like phenomenal, like playing every single part of the guitar. And one of the people in the comments was like, my guitar doesn't do that. Because she has added so much complexity to her guitar playing pattern that it is just effortless. She can do things that your average guitar player cannot do because she's channeled that much energy and focus and effort and repetition into that pattern that the unconscious pattern is now way more complex than your average guitar playing pattern. But it still doesn't have a huge emotional charge. If anything, it has a positive emotional charge. She's probably repeated the guitar playing because it brings her joy, excitement, or passion or purpose. And so there's no negative spin on that pattern. Now, when we think about patterns which we want to change, there is often a negative connotation to that pattern, and it often has a huge complexity to it and a huge emotional charge. So our unconscious, emotionally charged patterns are usually the ones responsible for our self-sabotage, and they are often related to how we have interacted with people, environments, or circumstances, and we have adapted that pattern in order to stay safe, in order to stay protected, in order to avoid conflict or criticism or a negative emotion of some kind. And so that pattern is deeply ingrained and deeply familiar. When we want to move out of that pattern, there is an alarm system that goes off. The pattern essentially screams, this is not familiar, this is uncomfortable, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel safe, this doesn't feel protective. This is too much life force energy to be using to come out of the normal familiar realms of our pattern. And because there's so many threads of complexity to it, because we have taken that pattern and then applied it to various people, places and things, it has a weight to it. So when we are feeling self-sabotage, it's often because the automatic unconscious pattern has started running. And it's usually started running because we're tired, we're sick, we're stressed, we're distracted. Something has happened that has taken our focus and attention that leaves us running on autopilot. Or we have come up against an emotion or a perceived emotion or threat that we might experience through trying to expand out of the unconscious pattern that is already established. So the pattern is screaming, I don't know that it's safe to do this, you might get criticised, there might be conflict here, there might be destruction, there might be trauma, let's come back here to safety, come back here to safety. And that is when we experience the self-sabotage. And it's not that the discomfort or the alarm bells of the unconscious pattern is dissuading us from our expansion, it just doesn't know any better. It was built to protect us and it is still trying to protect us. So one of the first things to do when we are in a state of self-sabotage is firstly have a look at where our attention is. Are we sick? Are we stressed? Are we distracted? Are we ill? Or have we come up against an emotion that feels threatening, that feels scary? Are we perceiving something in a certain way that doesn't feel safe anymore, doesn't feel familiar? And can we recognize that this sabotage, if you like, is simply a pattern that is trying to protect us? And it is now obviously an undated pattern and we want to move from it. In order to stop self-sabotage, we first recognize it, we first see what has triggered it, we look at the belief systems and the entanglement, the complexities of that pattern that are surrounding it. Do I feel like I will be ostracized if I continue this direction? Do I feel like I will be unsafe? Do I feel like I will be criticized or judged? Or will it create conflict with my family or my friends or my employer? What belief in that complex unconscious pattern has been triggered so that it starts to run itself automatically? The way that we start to inhabit the new pattern, the thing that we know that we consciously want to do, is first repetition. Repetition, repetition, repetition is the only thing that ingrains a pattern into our unconscious to make it habitual, to make it automatic. And if it's contradicting a pattern that already exists, the amount of times we have to repeat it is dependent on how many years that pattern has run. If you've been a people pleaser for 30 years, you're not going to change that tendency in 30 minutes. It's just not going to happen. And you might feel like you've changed it and then something stressful in your life happens, or you didn't get a good night's sleep. And so to conserve energy, your system is going to run the pattern that it knows. There's no familiarity in the new pattern. And so we pick ourselves up and we repeat the process. We pick up the guitar and we repeat the process. And the more experience, the more differentiation of that same experience, the more people, places or things we can interact with in the new way that we want to interact with, the more and more we solidify that pattern that we are trying to create. So the self-sabotage is not trying to sabotage you. It is trying to protect you. And you do not have to be in agreement with it. You can see it for the loving nature it is, for the way that it's protected you up until this point, for its viewpoint in that it is trying to be protective of you, and you continue to do the reps in the new desired pattern that you are creating. The second thing is, the more awareness you have, the more conscious choosing you do, the more likely you are to override the pattern, because the pattern is unconscious, but it was created with a lot of energy, attention, effort, concentration, and repetition. And so the more conscious we can become, the more present, the more self-aware we are, the more we can see when this unconscious pattern is being triggered, the more opportunity we have to choose rather than to agree with it and follow its direction. So the more conscious awareness we have, the more power we have over our unconscious patterns. So if you're somebody who is experiencing self-sabotage, it is totally normal. Every single human experiences it in some area of their life or another, and it is changeable. You just keep choosing, you keep recommitting, you keep repeating, you keep gaining the experience that you are patterning into your unconscious until it becomes the autonomous behaviour.